Ladies and gentlemen, they say dreams are like delicate birds, they're meant to fly, not be caged by careless words. But we live in a world where silence feels like weakness, and noise is often mistaken for power. So we share, we announce, we post, we tell the world where we're going long before we've taken the first step. But not everything sacred needs to be said aloud. There was a time I believed that telling people about my plans made them more real. That if I spoke with enough confidence, if I painted the picture vividly enough, people would clap and their claps would push me forward. I thought validation was fuel, but what I didn't realize was that not all claps are kind. Not all ears are safe. Not all advice is rooted in wisdom, and not all silence is absence. There's a common belief that the louder we are, the stronger we appear, that if we speak boldly about our goals and our future, we'll be seen as confident and brave. But true strength isn't always found in volume. It often lives in quiet places, inside the heart, behind closed doors, in the stillness of early mornings and long, silent nights. Silence is not weakness. It is a choice, a discipline, a quiet resistance against the need to explain, to prove, to seek applause before anything has even been built. There is something incredibly powerful about choosing not to speak when you know you could. There is a kind of inner power in holding your vision so close to your heart that no one else can reach it, question it, or influence it. People often mistake silence for uncertainty. They assume that if you're not talking about it, maybe you're not serious. Maybe you're scared, maybe you don't know what you're doing, but the truth is, silence can be the strongest form of certainty. It means you trust your process enough not to parade it. It means you value the journey more than the praise. When you keep your plans to yourself, you're not being secretive out of fear. You're protecting something sacred. You're allowing it to take form without interference, without comparison, without judgment. There's an incredible sense of focus that comes when you're not distracted by the noise of other people's opinions. The world is full of voices, some kind, some curious, some skeptical, and some quietly waiting for you to fail. The moment you open your plans to everyone, you invite those voices in, and even the most well-intentioned ones can plant seeds of doubt. You begin to hear things like, "Are you sure this will work?" Or "That's not how most people do it." And slowly those words start to echo inside your mind, louder than your own instincts. You question your direction, you pause, you reshape your dream to make it more acceptable, more believable, more digestible for others. But when you choose silence, you reclaim your space, you protect your momentum, you build a world where only your voice matters. It's in that space where you begin to trust yourself more. You begin to move according to your own rhythm, not someone else's expectations. The pressure to perform, to impress, to constantly update people on your progress disappears. You're not building for attention. You're building for meaning, for growth, for something real. There's also a quiet kind of confidence that people respect without even realizing it. When you carry yourself with purpose, when you're focused and grounded but not constantly explaining yourself, people begin to notice. They may not know what you're working on, but they feel the energy of someone who is rooted. Someone who is working with intention, and that kind of presence, unapologetic, quiet, and determined, is more impactful than any speech about what you're planning to do. In silence, you also learn to become your own source of motivation. You stop relying on others to tell you you're doing well. You stop waiting for recognition to feel proud. You start to find fulfillment in the doing, not the announcing. That shift changes everything. It takes you out of the performance and into the process. It strips away the performance layer of success and leaves you with something much more lasting: peace, clarity, and genuine drive. Choosing silence is not about hiding. It's about standing so firmly in your belief that you no longer need the world's permission to move forward. It's about understanding that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the steady breath, the calm hands, the unwavering heart that refuses to be shaken by noise. Not every vision needs validation. because not every vision is meant to be understood by others. The truth is, some dreams are planted so deep inside you that only you can see them clearly. They come to you in quiet moments, when no one is watching, when the world is still and your heart is loud. These visions are not built from logic or consensus. They're born from longing, from experience, from something that only you know how to carry. And when you take these dreams and lay them bare before people who have not lived your journey, you risk distorting their meaning. You risk letting someone else's limited sight shrink what was always meant to be expansive. It's tempting to seek validation. It feels safe. It feels reassuring. It gives you the illusion of progress, as though being told it's a good idea means it's closer to coming true. But external approval is not a measure of inner readiness. People validate what they can relate to. If they don't see it, if they haven't done it, if it challenges their comfort, they may not validate it. Not because your vision is flawed, but because their lens is limited. And when we rely on that validation, we start shaping our dreams into something digestible for others. We soften the edges, we change the tone, we second, guess our direction to fit someone else's narrative. The visions that change lives, that move mountains, that redefine everything, they rarely come pre-approved. They're often misunderstood, resisted, and questioned in their earliest stages, and that's okay. They're not supposed to make sense to everyone. Some visions are ahead of their time. Some are meant to be walked alone before they're ever seen by a crowd. When you learn to carry your vision without needing others to clap for it, you begin to move differently. You become the one who creates from purpose, not pressure. You become the one who listens inward, not outward. That shift is powerful. It turns you from a performer into a builder, from someone seeking permission to someone creating from conviction. Validation, when it becomes a habit, is a quiet thief. It robs you of your intuition. It replaces your inner compass with public opinion. It teaches you to wait for green lights that were never meant to control your path. But the truth is, you are the only one who knows why this dream matters. You are the only one who has seen the full picture in your mind, the moments you never spoke about, the pain that shaped the passion. No one else can fully grasp the meaning behind what you're trying to build, so how can they truly validate it? There's a kind of freedom in no longer needing validation. It allows you to dream without editing. It gives you space to fail without shame, to try without applause, to begin again without explanation. It teaches you to fall in love with your vision for its own sake, not for how it will be received, but for how deeply it speaks to you. And in that freedom you find clarity. You start walking straighter, lighter. You stop looking over your shoulder, waiting for someone to say, yes, you're on the right track. You stop doubting every choice just because no one clapped for it. You stop needing an audience to believe that you're enough. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for your vision is to protect it from being misunderstood too early, to give it room to evolve, to breathe, to become. To trust that it is valid even in silence, that it is worthy even without recognition, that it is yours even if no one else gets it, and that alone is enough to keep going. Not every vision needs validation, because not every vision is meant to be understood by others. The truth is, some dreams are planted so deep inside you that only you can see them clearly. They come to you in quiet moments, when no one is watching, when the world is still and your heart is loud. These visions are not built from logic or consensus. They're born from longing, from experience, from something that only you know how to carry. And when you take these dreams and lay them bare before people who have not lived your journey, you risk distorting their meaning. You risk letting someone else's limited sight shrink what was always meant to be expansive. It's tempting to seek validation. It feels safe. It feels reassuring. It gives you the illusion of progress, as though being told it's a good idea means it's closer to coming true. But external approval is not a measure of inner readiness. People validate what they can relate to. If they don't see it, if they haven't done it, if it challenges their comfort, they may not validate it. Not because your vision is flawed, but because their lens is limited. And when we rely on that validation, we start shaping our dreams into something digestible for others. We soften the edges, we change the tone, we second, guess our direction to fit someone else's narrative. The visions that change lives, that move mountains, that redefine everything, they rarely come pre-approved. They're often misunderstood, resisted, and questioned in their earliest stages, and that's okay. They're not supposed to make sense to everyone. Some visions are ahead of their time. Some are meant to be walked alone before they're ever seen by a crowd. When you learn to carry your vision without needing others to clap for it, you begin to move differently. You become the one who creates from purpose, not pressure. You become the one who listens inward, not outward. That shift is powerful. It turns you from a performer into a builder, from someone seeking permission to someone creating from conviction. Validation, when it becomes a habit, is a quiet thief. It robs you of your intuition. It replaces your inner compass with public opinion. It teaches you to wait for green lights that were never meant to control your path. But the truth is, you are the only one who knows why this dream matters. You are the only one who has seen the full picture in your mind, the moments you never spoke about, the pain that shaped the passion. No one else can fully grasp the meaning behind what you're trying to build, so how can they truly validate it? There's a kind of freedom in no longer needing validation. It allows you to dream without editing. It gives you space to fail without shame, to try without applause, to begin again without explanation. It teaches you to fall in love with your vision for its own sake, not for how it will be received, but for how deeply it speaks to you. And in that freedom you find clarity. You start walking straighter, lighter. You stop looking over your shoulder, waiting for someone to say, yes, you're on the right track. You stop doubting every choice just because no one clapped for it. You stop needing an audience to believe that you're enough. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for your vision is to protect it from being misunderstood too early, to give it room to evolve, to breathe, to become, to trust that it is valid even in silence, that it is worthy even without recognition, that it is yours even if no one else gets it. And that alone is enough to keep going. Early exposure invites unnecessary doubt, because the moment something sacred is placed in public view, it becomes vulnerable to more than just observation. It becomes subject to interpretation, opinion, and often quiet disapproval masked as concern. When we share our plans too soon, before they've had time to take root inside us, we unintentionally place them in a space where they can be bent, bruised, or broken by the voices that do not understand their origin. A plan, especially in its earliest form, is delicate. It's like wet clay, malleable, sensitive, not yet shaped. In that stage, it needs care, time, patience. But when exposed too early, it's shaped not only by your hands, but by the fingerprints of everyone you allow to touch it with their doubt, their logic, their fear there is something about people's reactions that lingers longer than we expect. One raised eyebrow, one forced smile, one dismissive shrug, and suddenly, something inside you begins to question what once felt so clear. It doesn't take many words to plant uncertainty. A simple "Are you sure?" said at the wrong time can echo for days in your mind. What was once a firm decision begins to feel unstable. What was once an inspired idea begins to look like a risk. Doubt, when it comes from someone else, can sometimes speak louder than your own voice, especially if your plan is still young and untested. And the truth is, most people don't mean harm. They speak from their own experiences, their own limitations, their own definition of what's possible. But their fear is not your reality. and their doubts are not your destiny. The early stage of a dream is the most sensitive. It's the time when your belief is building itself. It's not strong enough yet to defend itself against every question, every sideways comment, every practical concern disguised as advice. It's still becoming part of you. It's still learning how to survive. Exposing it too soon means you risk giving that process away. You allow the world to interfere with something that needs solitude, something that needs silence in order to thrive. You allow the voices of others to enter a space where only your conviction belongs. It's not about secrecy, it's about protection. When you expose something too early, you give it away before it belongs fully to you. And sometimes we do this because we're excited, because we want to be held accountable, because we want someone to say, "That's amazing, go for it." But the response we receive is not always the one we need. Instead of support, we get skepticism. Instead of encouragement, we get comparison. And that response, if we're not prepared for it, can cause us to retreat, to pause, or worse, to stop altogether. Not because the plan was wrong, but because the exposure was premature. There is a strength in knowing when to speak and when to stay still. Some plans need time in the dark before they are ready for the light. Some journeys need to begin in solitude before they can be shared with the crowd. In the beginning, your belief is your only anchor. You haven't yet seen proof. You don't yet have results. You're walking forward based solely on a feeling, a whisper, a pull that no one else can hear. And when you speak too soon, that fragile spark is exposed to winds that it's not yet ready to endure the world, doesn't always wait for your explanation before forming an opinion. It doesn't always handle fragile things with care. When you share your plans too early, you run the risk of letting other people's uncertainty become your own. You run the risk of changing direction not because it felt right, but because someone questioned you at the wrong moment. You risk dimming your light before it ever had the chance to shine on its own. Dreams grow best in protected spaces because they need an environment where they can breathe without pressure, stretch without fear, and evolve without interruption. The early phase of any dream is fragile, not because the dream is weak, but because the person carrying it is still learning how to hold it. It's a quiet season of forming trust with yourself, of learning how to walk steadily in a direction that often feels invisible to others. Just like a seed needs soil, darkness, and time before it ever meets the sun, your dreams need safety before they meet the spotlight. They need shelter from the noise, from the rush to prove, from the temptation to perform before you're ready. When a dream is kept in a protected space, it's not being hidden, it's being nurtured. It's being guarded from distractions and doubts that can pull it off course. It's being shielded from the unsolicited advice of people who don't understand it, and the expectations of people who want to shape it into something more familiar. Not every idea is meant to be questioned in its earliest form. Some things need to grow quietly, surrounded only by the hands that planted them. The moment a dream is exposed too early to a space that isn't safe or supportive, it begins to lose its original shape. It starts to adapt itself to survive the environment it's been placed in, rather than becoming what it was meant to be. We often think that sharing is a form of courage, that the more people we tell, the more real the dream becomes. But reality is not determined by visibility. It's shaped in the unseen moments, the long, unseen hours of reflection, the quiet decisions made without applause, the resilience built in solitude. That's where dreams either die or take root. Protected spaces give you the grace to make mistakes without being watched, the freedom to question yourself without judgment, and the space to rebuild without shame. These spaces are not lonely. They are sacred. They are where belief is formed without interference, where discipline grows without an audience. There's something profoundly powerful about knowing that what you're building is still yours and yours alone, that you are not rushing to share it because you trust the timing of its unfolding. You understand that pressure can sometimes distort progress, that exposure can sometimes demand performance, and performance, especially when it's too early, often replaces authenticity. A protected space is the opposite of a stage. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be honored. In that kind of space, you are not proving, you are practicing. You are not convincing, you are becoming. And there is so much quiet strength in that process. The more you protect your dream, the more deeply you can hear its voice. You're not filtering it through others' opinions. You're not constantly explaining why it matters. You're simply listening, learning, adjusting. You're letting the dream speak to you before it speaks to anyone else. And that relationship between you and your vision is where real clarity is born. Without the noise of other people's doubts or the need to meet their expectations, your focus sharpens. Your direction becomes more defined. You no longer feel the need to defend what you're doing. You just do it with quiet confidence, with inner certainty, with a calm that doesn't depend on applause. Every dream deserves that kind of space. A space where it's not judged by its current state, but believed in because of its potential. A space where you don't have to rush to show results, where progress doesn't need to be proven, where every small step is allowed to matter without being measured. That space gives you the time to become someone who is not just chasing a dream, but living in alignment with it. And that alignment cannot be forced or faked in public. It has to be felt and formed in private. In the slow, sacred unfolding of something that matters deeply to you, let results speak louder than intentions, because words can only carry a dream so far before they begin to lose weight. In the beginning, it feels empowering to speak about your goals. You think that by saying them out loud, they gain strength, that by sharing your passion, it somehow anchors your commitment. But intentions, no matter how passionately expressed, remain promises in the air until they are shaped by effort and movement. Results carry a language that needs no translation, no defense, no embellishment. They are silent proof of persistence, a quiet testament to consistency, and a reflection of the inner work that rarely gets noticed. Talking about what you're going to do can be addictive. It gives a temporary feeling of satisfaction, like progress has already been made. The applause comes early, the compliments flow, and for a moment you feel accomplished just for dreaming big. But that illusion can become a trap. The more we speak about our plans, the more we feel the need to live up to the version we've announced, and slowly the focus begins to shift. The energy that once went into building now begins to spread thin, diverted toward explaining, updating, impressing. The goal becomes a performance rather than a process, something to be displayed instead of something to be developed. Letting results speak doesn't mean being silent out of fear. It means being silent out of focus. It means knowing the value of your energy and choosing to invest it in action rather than announcements. It means understanding that real change is not always loud, that transformation often happens in the absence of recognition, and that growth is not validated by how many people notice it, but by how deeply it changes you. The quiet builders, the silent doers, the ones who show rather than tell, they carry a presence that speaks louder than any promise. They walk into a room and don't need to declare what they've done because the work they've put in radiates through who they've become. There is something undeniably powerful about arriving without having declared your departure, about becoming without constantly reminding the world of what you're trying to do. The person who shows up with results doesn't need to explain the late nights, the sacrifices, the doubts overcome in silence. Their journey is etched into what they've created. It's reflected in their posture, in their clarity, in their calm. You can feel the work they've done, not because they spoke about it, but because it's now part of them. When you choose to let results speak, you also create room for humility. You allow the process to be more important than the praise. You learn to measure success not by applause, but by impact. You become more interested in becoming better than being seen. You stop seeking validation at every step and start building with an inner rhythm that is not distracted by the noise outside. In that space, you find a different kind of satisfaction, one that comes not from being praised, but from knowing you followed through, that you kept going when no one was watching, that you didn't just talk about it. You lived it. Results are also harder to argue with. People may doubt your vision, question your choices, or dismiss your plans, but once the work is done, once the outcome stands in front of them, it speaks with a clarity that no explanation can rival. You don't need to go back and say, "I told you so." You don't need to prove your worth. The result becomes your voice. It becomes your response. It becomes the evidence of everything you quietly carried, everything you patiently worked for, everything you chose to honor in silence until the world could see it for itself. The more people you tell, the more pressure you invite, not because people want to see you fail, but because once your plan becomes public, it becomes part of their expectations too. What was once a personal journey turns into a public timeline. Suddenly, you're not just working for the dream, you're performing for the people. You start to hear the questions, "How's it going? Did you start yet? When will it be done?" And each question, no matter how well-meaning, becomes a subtle weight on your shoulders, a reminder that your pace is no longer entirely your own. You start measuring your progress not by how far you've come, but by how fast you think others expect you to go. Pressure changes the way you move. It makes you rush where you were meant to be patient. It makes you choose safe routes over bold ones. It makes you shrink your ideas into something more acceptable, something more presentable, something that won't disappoint anyone watching. You begin to confuse visibility with value, thinking that if people don't see constant updates, you must not be doing enough. But creativity doesn't always work on demand. Growth doesn't always follow a schedule. The real work is often quiet, hidden, repetitive. It's the daily grind that no one claps for, the decisions you make when no one's around, the discipline to keep going without a deadline to impress when too many eyes are watching. Your focus begins to blur. You're no longer guided by your own compass, but by the imagined expectations of those around you. You start to edit your journey before it's even fully formed. You second, guess your choices because you're worried how they'll be perceived. The dream becomes a project to manage rather than a purpose to fulfill. You lose the intimacy that once existed between you and your vision, the sacred space where it was just you and your why. That space, once filled with curiosity and clarity, becomes crowded with opinions, comparisons, and silent pressure to deliver something that's not ready to be delivered. There is a reason why some of the most meaningful journeys begin in solitude. Not because the person is hiding, but because they are protecting something precious, because they understand that peace is a powerful partner to progress. When you're not performing for anyone, you're free to fall without shame, to pause without guilt, to rebuild without explaining. You get to move at a pace that honors the process, not the pressure. You get to listen to your own instincts instead of adjusting to someone else's expectations. Not telling everyone doesn't make you secretive. It makes you selective. It means you understand that not every voice needs a seat at the table where your future is being shaped, that not every reaction needs to be managed, that not every opinion deserves space in your story. Some things grow better in silence, not because you're afraid of being seen, but because you're not yet ready to be shaped by what others might see. You're still becoming, you're still learning. And that process deserves the dignity of being private. There's a kind of strength in protecting your pace, in not being rushed by the world's hunger for results, in knowing that growth that lasts is often growth that takes its time. The more you stay grounded in your own rhythm, the less likely you are to burn out chasing deadlines that don't belong to you. the less likely you are to compromise the integrity of what you're building just to prove it exists. You learn to trust the invisible progress, the kind no one applauds but you can feel deep within. And in that trust, something shifts. You start showing up not to meet pressure, but to meet purpose.